friends, welcome to our YouTube channel Araj Academy. The main aim of this lecture is to discuss about the ISRO 2017 W solutions in a very detailed manner. And if you like the content of our channel, then please do like, share and subscribe our YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon button so whenever you upload a new video, the direct notification comes to mobile. If any improvements needed in our lectures, then please do comment in the comment section. We will definitely include all those improvements in the coming lectures. So why to waste more time? So let's get started. So now we are going to solve the 11th question. See the question here. In a negative feedback amplifier, the output impedance is decreased. So here, in a negative feedback amplifier, the output impedance is going to decrease. For which reason? So what are the four options? Option A, if the signal sampled is a voltage. If the signal sample is a voltage, then the overall impedance is going to get decreased. And now we'll discuss why this is the correct solution of this question. So now here there is an amplifier. The input is a source and the output is a load. So now here I am going to keep a feedback circuit with respect to output and input. So in the question they are asking, so now here the output impedance is going to decrease. For which reason? Suppose now I want to sample the voltage. If I want to sample the voltage, means I need to keep it in parallel manner. So in this manner only I can get a sampling of voltage. So if you do it like this, whatever the voltage you can sample, it is given as an input for a feedback circuit. So with the help of this one, you can sample the voltage. So now by sampling the voltage, it is given as an input for a feedback. So now with the help of this one, here the impedance, this impedance and this circuit impedance are now in parallel manner. So these two are connected in parallel fashion. So we can say here the impedance is going to get decreased. So the output impedance is going to get decreased because these two are connected in parallel manner. So with the help of parallel manner, the overall impedance is going to get decreased. So we can say the output impedance is going to get decreased. Suppose if you want to increase the output impedance, then I want to do a current sampling. So suppose for this amplifier, this is a source and this is a load. So now I want to do current sampling. Current sampling means I want to measure the current. So therefore, if you want to measure the current, always you have to connect in a series manner. So here this is a series manner. So with the help of this one, whatever the current in a load can flow through the feedback element also. So with the help of this one, we can sample a current. But in a parallel manner, we can sample the voltage of the output. So this voltage can given as an input for a feedback. So here the signal sample is voltage and here the signal sample is a current for the output. So we can say here this amplifier resistance and this feedback resistance are now connected in series manner because they have same amount of current. So we can say these two are connected in series because the current is same. So therefore we can say these two things are connected in series. So therefore the output impedance is going to get increased. So whenever a current is sampled, the output impedance is going to increase because they are in series, and whenever you are going to sample a voltage, here these two things are going to present in parallel manner. So therefore we can say the output impedance is going to get decreased. Now we are going to solve the 12th question. See the question here. The amount of feedback applied to an amplifier reduces the gain by a factor of 10, the bandwidth. So in this question, by using the feedback, the gain is decreased by 10 times. Then what is the nature of the bandwidth? So basically the gain is going to decrease only if you are going to apply negative feedback. So only by negative feedback the gain is going to get decreased, but by using the positive feedback the gain is going to get increased. So here the feedback amplifier is nothing but it is a negative feedback, and now the gain is decreased by 10 times. Then what is the nature of the bandwidth, whether it is increased or decreased or whether it is constant, that we need to figure out. So what are the four options? Option B, it is increases by a factor of 10 is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this numerical. So now in this question, here we are going to use a negative feedback. So with the help of this negative feedback, the overall gain is decreased by 10 times. So now we have to find what is the bandwidth we need to figure out of this new circuit. Suppose here I am going to assume A is a gain and B is the bandwidth. So now the new gain is equal to 1 by 10th of the old gain. Here AN is called as a new gain and AO is called as the old gain. So now we have to find what is the new bandwidth we need to figure out. See, always the gain into bandwidth is always constant, means the product of the gain and the bandwidth will be always constant. So therefore now old gain into old bandwidth is equal to new gain into new bandwidth. So here old gain is A naught, old bandwidth is B naught, but the new gain is equal to 1/10 of the old gain. So therefore A naught by 10 into Bn. So A naught is going to get cancelled. So therefore new bandwidth is equal to 10 times of the old bandwidth. So we can simply say that the bandwidth is increased by 10 times. So when the gain is reduced by 10 times, the bandwidth is increased by 10 times. So therefore the product is equal to still the constant. So this is the correct solution of this question. So now we are going to solve the 13th question. See the question here. The potentiometer sensitivity can be increased by. So for the potentiometer we have to increase the sensitivity by which manner? So what are the four options? Option B, increasing the length of the potentiometer wire. So by increasing the length of the potentiometer wire, we can increase the sensitivity of a potentiometer. And now we'll discuss why only by increasing the length of a potentiometer here we are going to increase the sensitivity. So now let us discuss something more about this one. So this is a circuit diagram of a potentiometer. The supply voltage is V and there is a small amount of resistance R, and this is basically a conductor of uniform conductor, means it is going to have a same resistance for each and every small amount of length, means it is going to have a uniform resistance over this total conductor, means as the length increases the resistance is also going to increase in a linear manner for this a conductor. So now here let me take a E1. Here E1 is called as the known voltage and E2 is the unknown voltage. So here there is an ammeter and here also there is an ammeter, and this one we say it is a sliding wire, or we can say jockey. So here we are going to move this jockey on this conductor. So at a particular point, suppose let me assume at this point P, let me assume this is the point P. At this point P the current in this ammeter is equal to 0. And now the distance from this point, let me assume this is L1, and similarly now let me take another voltage E2 which I don't know. So now I want to find what is the voltage of this E2. So now here also same thing, here also I need to slide this wire on this slide wire. So I need to move this jockey on this conductor. So let me assume at a point Q, here the current in this ammeter is equal to 0. So here let me assume the length from this position to this position, let me assume the length is L2. So now if you want to know what is the value of E2 and with the help of E1, the relation is the voltage drop across this length L1 is directly proportional to its length. So that voltage is equal to directly proportional to its length. So therefore E1 by E2 is equal to L1 by L2. So if you know the value of E1, we can easily figure out the value of E2. So we can say with the help of known voltage we can easily figure out the unknown voltage. That is the basic principle of potentiometer. So we can measure even a very smallest value of voltage, we can measure with the help of potentiometer. So here, so this is a voltage V for a length of L. So this is a supply voltage, it can drop entirely when the resistance is 0, it can drop entirely across the length L. So this is the voltage across the length L. So for unit length, for 1 unit length, what is the voltage drop I want to figure out? Let me assume it is K. So if you divide V by K is equal to L by 1, so therefore K is equal to V by L. So this is a voltage drop in a unit length and we say it is a potential gradient. So K is called as a potential gradient, which is the voltage drop in a unit length. Suppose if I want to increase the length of a wire, means the K is going to get decrease. It means that if the length of the wire is going to get increased, even the potential gradient means the voltage per a small unit length is going to get decreased. Means if the length is going to increase, the voltage per unit length is going to get decreased. Means we can measure even that small voltage, with the help of potentiometer. That is, we say it as a sensitivity. So sensitivity in a potentiometer indicates what is the amount of smallest voltage that you can measure with the help of this potentiometer. Sensitivity is nothing but how much amount of smallest voltage that you can measure with the help of this potentiometer, we say that is a sensitivity. So if you want to measure a smallest voltage, then the length should be very high. So therefore the potential gradient will be very small, means the voltage per the unit length will be very, very small. So that much amount of smallest voltage also we can measure with the help of potentiometer. So therefore finally, if we increase the length of a potentiometer, the potential gradient will be decreasing, means the voltage per a unit length is going to get decreased, means that much amount of smallest voltage also we can measure with the help of potentiometer. That is called as a sensitivity. So sensitivity can be increased by increasing the length of this potentiometer of this conductor. We can increase by increasing the length of the conductor of this potentiometer. We can increase the sensitivity, means a smallest amount of voltage also we can measure with the help of this potentiometer. So now we are going to solve the 14th question. See the question here. The frequency domain and the time domain are related through. So here in this question they are saying that by what way we are going to relate the time domain and the frequency domain. So option A, Laplace transform, option D, Gauss elimination, and option C, both A and B, and option D, none of the above. So out of these four options, option A, the Laplace domain. So with the help of the Laplace method only we can relate the time domain and the frequency domain. And now let us discuss something more about this one. So by using Laplace transform, we can relate the time domain and also the frequency domain. Whereas the Gauss elimination method, basically this Gauss elimination method, we are going to use this method in order to solve the linear equations. As you are already seen in the matrices chapter, this Gauss elimination method is used in order to solve the linear equations. So by using solving the linear equations, whether we can get no solution or whether we can get a solution of unique value or whether we can get infinite solutions. So with the help of Gauss elimination method, we can solve the linear solutions and we can get either a no solution or unique solution or infinite solutions for a given set of linear equations. So by this method we can solve a linear equations. But these two are different methods. These are very two different. These two are independent of each other. So we can say Laplace transform is going to relate a time domain and frequency domain, and Gauss elimination method is going to solve the linear equations in order to give a solution or a no solution. So now we are going to solve the 15th question. See the question here. If the gain of a critical damped system is increased, then it will become. So here, if the gain of a critical damped system is increased, then the system will become which type? So out of the four options, option A, under damped system, is the correct solution of this question, which is under damped system. So now let us solve this numerical. So in this question, they are already given that the system is in a critically damped. So now the gain is increased. So now we have to find what is the nature of the system. So before solving this question, we have to know what is the relation between a zeta and gain. Zeta is called as the damping ratio and K is the gain. So what is this relation we need to figure out? So before I explain this relation, let me tell you a small example. So from this example, we are going to figure out the relation between a damping ratio and a gain, and then we can easily solve this question. So let me assume this is a plant. The plant transfer function g of s is equal to k by s into s plus 1, and a feedback factor which is a unity. So the input is r of s and the output is c of s. So by using this, I want to know what is the characteristic equation of this negative feedback system I want to figure out. So the characteristic equation of a negative feedback system, which is 1 plus g of s h of s is equal to 0. So now I know the value of g of s and I also know the value of h of s. So substitute here. Now we are going to get 1 plus k by s into s plus 1 is equal to 0. So if you solve this equation, finally we are going to get s square plus s plus k is equal to 0. So where k is called as a gain, where k is called as a gain of the system. So now I want to know what is the standard second order characteristic equation. The standard second order characteristic equation, which is s square plus 2 zeta omega ns plus omega n square is equal to 0. So these two things are in the same manner. So therefore I am going to compare its values, coefficient values I am going to compare. So here s square coefficient is 1 and here also s square coefficient is 1. But here s coefficient is 1 and here it is 2 zeta omega n. So therefore 2 zeta omega n is equal to 1, and by comparing here omega n square is equal to k. So omega n square is equal to k. So therefore omega n is equal to under root over k. So substitute here omega n value, which is 2 into zeta into under root over k is equal to 1. So zeta is equal to 1 by 2 into under root over k. So we can say zeta is inversely proportional to square root of k. So this is the relation between a damping ratio and the gain k. So this is the relation between a damping ratio and gain k. So now For zeta is equal to 0, we say it is a undamped system, means oscillations are going to present for all time. And for zeta lying between 0 to 1, the oscillations are going to get damped, means as time goes on, the oscillations are going to get reduced. So we say it is a underdamped system. And when zeta is equal to 1, we say it is a critical damped system, means there will be no oscillations. It is a pure exponential way of increasing of the signal. Whereas zeta greater than 1, we say it is a overdamped system. Overdamped system means for zeta greater than 1 also, the system will have no oscillations, but still it will be more sluggish, means more slow of response. The time taken for the response to reach the steady state value takes more amount of time when compared to critical damped system. So now here in the question they have already told you the system is a critical damped system. So now the gain is going to get increased. As the gain is going to get increased, as the k increases, the zeta value goes on decreases. So initially the zeta is equal to 1. So if you increase gain k, if you increase, the zeta value goes on decreases, means it will be less than 1. So less than 1 is nothing but it is a underdamped system. Suppose if the gain is decreased, means the zeta value increases, so we can say the system will become now overdamped. So but here in the question they have mentioned that as the gain is k increases, the zeta value decreases, means whenever the system is a critical damp, and if you still increase the gain k, it becomes zeta less than 1. So we can say it is a underdamped system. So finally as the gain k is increased, so the critical damped system became now underdamped system. So oscillations are going to get reduced or die as time goes on. So answer is underdamped system is the correct solution of this question, and this is the relation between a damping ratio and a gain k. So now we are going to solve the 16th question. See the question here. The power transformer is a, option A, constant current device, option B, constant voltage device, and option C, constant power device, and option D, pulsating main flux device. So out of these 4 options, option D, pulsating main flux device is the correct solution of this question. So let's discuss something more about this power transformer. So basically transformers in power system are going to classify into 2 types, which are the power transformer and the distribution transformer. So in the power system, the most efficient device is a transformer. It is going to have ideally 19, and practically it is going to have 99.75 is the percent or efficiency percentage of a transformer. So no other devices in the power system will have this much amount of efficiency. So we can say transformer is a very highly efficient. So the practical range is 99.75% of efficiency with a low amount of losses. So in power system there are 2 types of transformers, which are the power transformer and the distribution transformer. So power transformer is going to used in the substation, and it is always operated at the rated capacity, and transformer basically is a constant flux machine. And also the distribution transformer, it is going to operate at the residential loads on the industrial loads. See, whatever the transformers you see at your houses, those we say it as a distribution transformer. As the load is varying, so always the load cannot be a full load, so therefore we can say it is a variable load. The load is always a variable for a distribution transformer, and the transformer basically it's a constant flux device. So this is a transformer small diagram, and is a primary we are going to give a supply, and secondary we are going to connect a load. See, at no load condition, a small amount of current is going to draw by this device, and let me assume it is a no load current. It's a very small value. So with the help of I naught, the flux is going to get produced in this core. I am going to assume the direction is phi. So with the help of I naught, the flux produced is phi. Phi is nothing but it is a alternating flux. So phi is equal to phi m sin omega t. So now suppose I am going to connect a load. So now I am going to connect a load. So because of this, what is going to happen is the flux, the new flux will be generated in an opposite manner, and let me assume this is phi 1. So because of this opposition, the overall flux is going to get reduced. So because of overall flux reduced, the EMF also across this wire is going to reduce. So there will be a small amount of resistance. As the EMF is going to reduce, supply voltage is constant, so therefore the current drawn will be very higher. So let me assume the current is now a little bit of current, which is say it is a I dash. So this much amount of current is a new current is drawn, which is I dash. So this I dash is going to get a produce a flux which is equal to the phi 1. So therefore these phi 1 and phi 1 are going to get cancelled, and then the overall flux in the machine is always the same as the previous one. So we can say the flux in a machine is always constant, no matter whether it is a load or whether it is a no load. At each and every condition the flux is a constant flux, but it is a alternating in nature. Means the RMS value is a constant, but it is a, with respect to time domain, it is a alternating, or we can say pulsating. So finally we can say the transformer is always, whether it is a power transformer or distribution transformer, always it is a constant flux device, or we can say even pulsating main flux device. This is the correct solution of this question. So now we are going to solve the 17th question. See the question here. A change of 5% in supply voltage to an induction motor will produce a change of approximately. So if you change the supply voltage to an induction motor of 5%, then what is the change in the rotor torque? How much amount of change in the rotor torque we need to figure out? So what are the four options? Option C, 10% change in the rotor torque we are going to see. So option C is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this numerical. So the electromechanical torque generated in a induction motor, the expression is T is equal to 180 by 2 pi ns into S E2 square R2 by R2 square plus S x2 whole square. This is the expression of the electromagnetic torque which is produced in an induction rotor. So now here, if you see carefully, the relation between the torque and the voltage, which is torque, is directly proportional to E2 square, where E2 is called as the EMF induced in a rotor. Or we can say if the supply voltage is increased, then we can say EMF induced in the rotor is also going to get increased. So we can say finally the torque is directly proportional to square of the supply voltage. So therefore here in the first case they are given, suppose the voltage V1, with the help of initial voltage is V1, then we are going to get torque of T1. Suppose if the voltage is changed by 5%, so whether it can be increased or decreased. So now in this case I am going to choose that the voltage is increased by 5%. So therefore V2 is equal to 5% increase means, which is 105 by 100 V1, we can say, which is 1.05 V1. So for this increase of voltage, how much amount of torque is changed we need to figure out. So here, as we already know, the relation between the torque and voltage, which is torque is directly proportional to square of the voltage. So therefore T1 by T2 is equal to V1 by V2 whole square. So V2 is equal to 1.05 V1. Substitute here, and if you solve this one, we are going to get T2 is equal to 1.1025 T1. So if you see carefully, the T2 is greater than T1. So now I want to know what is the percentage of change. So final value minus initial value by initial value into 100, which is T2 minus T1 by T1 into 100. So if you substitute T2 here, and if you do the simplification, finally we are going to get plus 10.25%, means it is nearly equal to 10%. So now if you increase the voltage by 10%, if you increase the voltage by 5%, then the torque is going to increase by 10%. If you decrease the voltage by 5%, the torque is going to reduce by 10%. This is a simple thing. So if you increase the voltage by 5%, the torque is increased by nearly 10%. If you decrease the supply voltage by 5%, then the torque is going to get reduced by nearly 10%. This is a very simple relation. So 10% change in the electrical torque generated in an induction rotor is the 10% change. It is a correct solution of this question. So now we are going to solve the 18th question. See the question here. In a long uniform coil of inductance 2L and associated resistance 2R ohms is physically cut into two exert halves which are rewound in parallel. The resistance and inductance of the combination are. So basically here there is a coil of inductance 2L and 2R. So now we are going to cut this wire into two exert halves, and then we are going to make this combination into a parallel fashion, and then what is the net equivalent resistance and inductance we need to figure out. So out of the four options, option C, R by 2 and L by 2 is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this numerical. So now here they are given a coil of inductance 2L and 2R. So this coil is now made into two equal parts. So now the inductance will become half of that one and resistance will become half of that one. Here also two equal parts. So therefore it will be L and R. So now these two things I am going to make it in a parallel fashion, and then I want to find what is the net equivalent resistance and inductance. So here these two are equal. So impedance is nothing but, let me assume the impedance of this wire Z1 is equal to R plus J omega L, and the impedance of the second wire is equal to R plus J omega omega L, both are same. If they are connected in parallel, the net impedance is a parallel combination, which is Z1 Z2 by Z1 plus Z2. So both are same values. So finally, if you do simplification, we are going to get Z equivalent is equal to R by 2 plus J omega L by 2. So if you make this parallel combination, the net equivalent will have resistance of R by 2 and inductance of L by 2. So this is the correct solution of this question. So if you cut a wire into two equal parts, inductance become L and resistance R, L and R. And if you made into parallel combination, then the net resistance is R by 2 and the net inductance is L by 2. So this is the correct solution of this question. Now we are going to solve the 19th question. See the question here. Consider the following system of equations in three real variables x1, x2 and x3. So these are the three equations, linear equations. Now the system of equations has. So here these are the three equations. Now we have to find whether a solution exists, or if solution exists, then what is either the unique or infinite. We need to figure out. So out of these four options, option B, a unique solution is going to exist for these equations, and now option B is the correct solution. So let's solve this numerical. So this is a linear system of equations. So for these three equations, we have to find whether a solution exists or not. So here first thing is I want to write in terms of augmented matrix, means I need to write the coefficients -1, -4, 1, 3. Same here. 3 minus 2, 5, 2. Same here. 2 minus 1, 3, 1. So I have written an augmented matrix. So now here the first thing is I want to make this as 0. This is the procedure of Gauss elimination method. Always we have to, after this first element, all these things I want to make it to 0 by doing the some row techniques. So by row transformations, I want to make these two elements as 0. So if I want to make this element as 0, which is a second row, this is the first row, second row and third row. So if I want to make this as second row, this first element to be 0, then I have to do R2, I have to replace R2 by 3R1 plus R2, then I am going to get here 0. And similarly this also I want to make it to 0. So now R3 I need to replace by 2 times of R1 plus R3, then I can make this element also 0. So if you do this method, if you do this one for each and every element, then finally this is a matrix you are going to get now. So now I want to make, for the second column I want to make this as a 0. This is a method of a Gauss elimination method. So if I want to make this element as 0 with the help of R2, then R3 should be replaced by minus R by 14 times of R2 plus R3. So if you do this for each and every of R2 and R3, then finally I am going to get, this is the matrix I am going to get, which is -1, -4, 1, 3, 0, -14, 8, 11, 0, 0, -1 by 7, -1 by 14. So this is the matrix A, and this is the matrix, overall matrix A cross A bar, A by B. So for the matrix A, the number of non-zero rows are 3. So number of non-zero rows indicates that it is a rank of a matrix. So rank of a matrix A is equal to 3 because there are 3 number of non-zero rows. But the A augmented B means augmented matrix, here this is the total augmented matrix. Here also the number of non-zero rows are, which are 3. So we can say the augmented matrix also has number 3. So 3 is nothing but, here the rank of matrix A is equal to rank of augmented matrix, and 3 is nothing but it is the number of variables. The number of variables are x1, x2, x3. So we can say the rank of matrix A and the rank of augmented matrix are both are equal, and it is equal to a number of variables. So we can say this is a solution is exists, and it is a unique solution. If it is a unique solution, it is a unique solution because both are equal and it is equal to number of variables. So we can say it is a unique solution. Suppose if you want to figure out what is the exact solution, so now make this one here x1, x2, x3. So -1 by 7, x3 is equal to -1 by 14, and second equation is -14 x2 plus 8 x3 is equal to 11, second equation. And here -x1 -4 x2 plus x3 is equal to 3. So if you solve this one, we are going to get, from this we are going to get x3. So if you substitute here, we are going to get x2. If you substitute x2 and x3, we are going to get x1. So if you do simplification, we are going to get x1 is equal to minus of, x2 is equal to minus of, and x3 is equal to half. So this is not at all required, but here I have given a method in order to find the exact what is the unique solution. This is a unique solution. Only this is the only point which is going to satisfy all these 3 equations. So in the examination you have to do only up to here, because you have to figure out whether a solution exists. If it is exists, whether it is a unique solution or infinite solution. Here the rank of A and rank of A cross B, if both are equal, then definitely a solution can be unique or infinite. But if they are not equal, then definitely solution is not going to get exist. See here, if the rank of A is not equal to rank of A cross B, then we can say there is no solution. Suppose if they are equal, and if they are equal to number of variables, then it's a unique solution. But if they are equal and if it is not equal to number of variables, then we can say it has infinite number of solutions. These three conditions you have to remember in order to know whether solution exists. Even if it is exist, whether it is a unique solution or infinite solutions. For this, the rank both are equal and it is equal to number of variables, so second satisfies, so second condition is satisfied, so we can say it is a unique solution. So now we are going to solve the last question of this lecture. See the question here: which one of the following functions would have only odd power of x in its Taylor series expansion about the point x is equal to 0? So here in this question they are saying, suppose the Taylor series expansion of functions at x is equal to 0 will have only odd powers. We need to figure out which out of this which is going to have only the odd powers at x is equal to 0. So out of the four options, option A, sine of x cube, is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this numerical. So now the Taylor series expansion of f of x at x naught, see, which is f of x is equal to f of x naught plus x minus x naught by 1 factorial, f dash of x naught plus x minus x naught whole square by 2 factorial, f double dash of x naught, and it goes on. It indicates that this function f of x is approximated to this whole function at only x naught. Suppose if x naught is equal to 0, then for sin x, cos x and e to the power of x, we are going to get these relations. So now if you substitute those things here in this formula, finally we are going to get this is the expressions, and these are very much, so you can remember these formulas, which is sin x is equal to x minus x cube by 3 factorial plus x to the power of 5 by 5 factorial minus x to the power of 7 by 7 factorial, and it goes on. And similarly cos x is equal to 1 minus x square by 2 factorial plus x to the power of 4 by 4 factorial minus x to the power of 6 by 6 factorial, and it goes on. But here the power of x is equal to 1 plus x by 1 factorial plus x square by 2 factorial plus x cube by 3 factorial, and it goes on. So here these functions are defined. These functions, this sin x, cos x and e to the power of x are equal to these functions only at x is equal to 0, but not at each and every point. It is only at x is equal to 0, this sin x can be approximated to these equations, and similarly cos x is approximated to these equations, and e to the power of x is equal to these expressions. Only at x is equal to 0, but not at each and every point. So now here the option A, option B, option C and option D, which is sine of x cube. So wherever x is there, replace x by x cube. So if you replace x by x cube, we are going to get, this is the equation we are going to get. And cos sine of x square. So wherever x is there, replace x by x square. So you are going to get, this is the expression. And cos of x cube. So wherever x is there, replace x by x cube, we are going to get, this is the expression. And similarly cos of x square. Wherever x is there, replace x by x square, we are going to get, this is the expression. So if you see carefully here, option B, option C and option D, here all the things are even powers. X square, 6, 10, 14, 6, 12, 18, 4, 8, 12, all these are even powers. But for the first one, 3, 9, 15, 21, all are odd powers. So we can say only for sine of x cube will have odd powers and remaining all will have even powers. So this is the correct solution of this question. In this lecture we have discussed the 20 questions of the ISRO 2017 W solutions in a very detailed manner. And if you like the content of our channel, then please do like, share and subscribe our YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon button, so whenever we upload a new video, the direct notifications comes to mobile. If any improvements needed in our lectures, then please do comment in the comment section. We will definitely include all those improvements in the coming lectures. Thank you so much for watching this lecture. Keep smiling, take care and bye bye.